There is a kind of tiredness that does not come from the body, but from the soul. A subtle exhaustion, almost imperceptible, that comes from desiring a life of abundance, yet waking each day feeling that something is still missing. You look around, and even when everything seems fine, there's a quiet sensation within you that prosperity never fully arrives. It comes in fragments, in waves, in uncertain intervals. You move forward, and then somehow fall back, as if there were an invisible ceiling pulling you down each time you try to rise. And maybe that limit has never been outside you. Maybe it's been inside all along, a mental architecture built years ago, still operating on scarcity while your heart cries out for expansion. Napoleon Hill once said, "The mind, when mastered, can accomplish anything the heart desires and reason plans." But what few truly understand is that this mind must be governed by laws, not random wishes. It needs structure, not chaos. It needs discipline, not desperation. You can't plant the seeds of abundance in the soil of emotional confusion. You can't grow a new reality while the roots are still tied to fear, guilt, or doubt. If the inner program remains conditioned by lack, abundance will always find the door closed. It will approach, but it won't stay. It will appear, but never expand. Joe Dispenza reminds us that an unprogrammed mind repeats the past, even while desiring the future. You cannot create the new using the same emotions that created your old limitations. It's like trying to grow flowers in soil still poisoned by what once withered there. The intention might be beautiful, but the field still responds to memory, not desire. Abundance isn't privilege, it isn't luck, it isn't moral worth, it is structure. It is the inevitable outcome of a mind that has been reorganized to reflect wholeness instead of fear. Abundance is what happens when thought, emotion, and vibration align as one single truth. Perhaps what you seek now isn't more money, or more time, or more opportunities. Perhaps what you truly seek is to become someone for whom abundance is natural, effortless, stable. Someone who no longer chases but attracts. Someone who no longer asks to deserve, because they've become vibrationally aligned with what already belongs to them. And this begins not with noise but with silence, with the installation of internal laws, invisible yet exact, laws that rewire the mind from scarcity to creation, from fear to flow, from resistance to inevitability. Because once your internal field is reordered, abundance ceases to be a goal and becomes your nature. Abundance doesn't begin outside, it begins within as an image, one that may not yet have words but carries feeling. The mind doesn't manifest what you say you want. It manifests what you see with consistency, what you feel is familiar and emotionally true. Napoleon Hill said, "Success begins with a clear mental picture." That picture is not merely visual, it's vibrational. It's the kind of image your body recognizes as real before your eyes can see it. It's a vision charged with emotion, with coherence, with life. But what happens when that inner image is unclear? When you say you want abundance, but within you still carry the photograph of scarcity? When you dream of prosperity as something distant, not as something you inhabit? In those moments, the mind becomes divided, and division weakens creation. Ambiguity is the playground of sabotage. You move forward with will, but your vibration hesitates. You imagine, but you still doubt. You act, but you don't yet believe. The mind cannot produce what it hasn't accepted emotionally. The first work of abundance is not external, it's internal alignment. The first wealth is the vision that feels real. Because the mind is not moved by words, but by conviction. It doesn't obey what you wish for, but what you feel as truth. That's why this first law, the law of the inner image, is not poetic. It's structural. It builds the invisible mold into which reality must pour itself. And if that mold is cracked, unclear, or contaminated with doubt, abundance has no vessel to enter. The first abundance, therefore, is not money or opportunity. It is the emotionally accepted vision, the image you can hold quietly and feel vibrating as already true. That is the birthplace of all creation. That is where new worlds begin, not as a promise, but as a certainty. There is a vast difference between wanting something and being ready to receive it. Desire is fragile. It fluctuates. It depends on circumstances. But conviction is unshakable. Conviction is when your body believes before your eyes have proof. It's when your vibration holds steady even in the absence of evidence. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Faith is the state of mind that activates the subconscious." But faith is not reciting phrases of hope. It's embodying an energy of certainty so complete that doubt becomes irrelevant. This kind of faith doesn't come from logic. It comes from union, the alignment between deep desire and emotional decision. It's the moment you stop asking and begin inhabiting, when you no longer seek proof because you've already chosen your truth. That is when reality begins to bend, not because you forced it, but because you've become compatible with it. Silent conviction is the invisible root that holds the tree firm, even when no fruit is visible yet. It's the quiet, unwavering yes that sustains creation when everything else says no. The mind only executes what it emotionally accepts as true. That's why so many dreams collapse, because beneath the wish lies doubt. Conviction is the antidote. It's the silent anchor that says, "Even in silence I remain." It no longer waits for guarantees. It is the guarantee. And what vibrates as emotional certainty inevitably takes form, not through luck, but through coherence. The second law reminds us that faith doesn't need to shout to be powerful. True faith is calm, grounded, and consistent. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need proof. It simply knows. And in that knowing, abundance begins to move toward you, because the universe cannot resist coherence. You cannot receive what has no room to enter. The mind, like life, needs space for flow. Yet so many carry within them the clutter of old emotions. Guilt, resentment, fear, emotional debts left unpaid. These energies occupy space in your vibrational field, leaving no room for new frequencies to settle. The desire for more clashes with the heaviness of what hasn't yet been released. And in that clash, energy stagnates. Life slows. Abundance waits at the door uninvited. Joe Dispenza teaches that it's impossible to create the new while repeating the emotional patterns of the old. Those patterns are not just thoughts, they're frequencies. They are memories that echo through the body, creating an atmosphere where nothing new can grow. Napoleon Hill spoke of the creative vacuum, the necessity of emptying oneself, so that new ideas, new resources, and new connections can emerge. But to empty is not to lose. It is to reorder. It's to make peace with what was, so the new can find a home. Most people want more wealth, more love, more opportunity, but they forget to release the weight of what no longer serves. They hold on to what hurt them, what defined them, what limited them. And as long as those energies remain, the field remains full. And where there is noise, abundance cannot hear your call. The third law calls for the courage to let go, to stop clinging to what's familiar but heavy, to make space for what is different, lighter, aligned. Abundance doesn't just come to those who ask. It comes to those who have space, space to receive, space to breathe, space to let life move freely once again. Abundance doesn't respond to vague requests. It responds to precision, not the precision of numbers or strategy, but of emotion. The universe does not recognize more money, more success, more happiness. It recognizes vibration, the feeling behind those words, the detail of what that abundance means to you. Napoleon Hill taught that success begins with a clear mental picture. Joe Dispenza expanded that truth. The brain needs to know where to land its attention, or it gets lost in noise. To say "I want abundance" is not enough. What does abundance feel like? What is its emotional signature? What state does it awaken in your body? If you don't know, your vibration becomes scattered, unfocused. But when you define it, not with logic, but with emotional precision, the field aligns. Energy becomes magnetized. Possibilities begin to form pathways toward you. Because emotion, when coherent, becomes instruction for the universe. Abundance is not summoned by the mind. It's sculpted by feeling. You must not only want it, you must become the emotion of it. You must know its texture, its rhythm, its inner calm. The fourth law reminds us that abundance has a frequency, and it will only meet you at its level. Precision vibration is not control, it's coherence. It's when your intention and your emotion move together in perfect harmony. That's when manifestation stops being effort and starts being physics. The mind cannot separate what it feels toward others from what it experiences within itself. The energetic field is circular, one continuous current. Whatever you silently resent, envy, or judge in another, You unconsciously deny to yourself, this isn't morality, it's vibration. Resentment is resistance, judgment is separation, and every separation reduces the flow of receiving. Napoleon Hill spoke of the power of generous thought. He saw generosity not as charity, but as vibrational intelligence. When you genuinely wish success upon others, you expand your own capacity to receive, because you enter the same frequency. When you judge or diminish others, you step out of the field. You vibrate lack. You reinforce the idea that abundance is limited, that for someone to win, another must lose. And that belief alone is enough to stop the flow. The universe doesn't listen to what you say politely. It listens to what you feel truthfully. When your energy celebrates another's growth, you step closer to your own. When you secretly resent it, you affirm scarcity. The fifth law teaches that abundance is circular. It's never conquered against anyone. It's permitted by inclusion, by expansion, by unity. What you bless in others, you bless in yourself. What you block in others, you block in yourself. Because in truth, there is only one field, and it mirrors your openness perfectly. Most people don't fail for lack of desire. They fail for lack of endurance. It's easy to believe when everything flows, when signs are abundant, when doors open. But the real test is silence, the space between planting and harvest, the invisible phase where nothing seems to move. That's where the mind either collapses or matures. Napoleon Hill called persistence the invisible ingredient of success. Invisible because it doesn't announce itself, because it's built in quiet moments when no one is watching. It's in those moments that frequency either stabilizes or falls apart. A reprogrammed mind knows this. Manifestation is cyclical. There are expansions and contractions, activity and rest, visibility and mystery. Abundance never disappears. It reorganizes. It moves in rhythms. And those who understand the rhythm never panic when the music pauses. Abundance is not a financial condition. It is a sustained frequency. The person who can hold that vibration through silence, through uncertainty, through delay, that person becomes unstoppable. The sixth law reveals that abundance belongs to the emotionally mature, to those who no longer need constant evidence to maintain faith, to those who understand that what is sustained internally must eventually appear externally, because what is coherent inside always finds its way out. There is a place within you where everything begins, the source, the still, quiet origin of all manifestation. Most people seek abundance outside, in opportunities, in relationships, in recognition. But the more they search, the more it escapes. Because abundance is not found, it's activated. Napoleon Hill said, "You are the only source of your own power." And those words are a mirror. They require you to stop waiting, to stop outsourcing your strength, to stop believing that your flow depends on something external. The scarcity mind always looks outward. It chases, compares, and competes. But in that chase, it forgets that the world is only a reflection. Outer limitation is inner disconnection. When you realign internally, when you remember your own authorship, life must respond. Joe Dispenza explains that when your internal state changes, your external reality has no choice but to reorganize. That's not a metaphor, that's coherence. It's the science of consciousness meeting the physics of energy. The seventh law calls you back to the source, your center. It invites you to stop asking and start remembering. Abundance begins not in the future, but in this moment, in this breath. The true wealth isn't what you receive, but what you radiate. Because when the source within you awakens, you stop trying to attract, you start to emanate. And what emanates from truth always returns, multiplied. Every form of abundance is born from a cultivated mind, one disciplined by purpose, faith, and persistence. Napoleon Hill said, "Wealth begins with a state of mind, with purpose, faith, and persistence." Wallace D. Wattles added, "Think in the right way, act efficiently, and do not fail." The right way of thinking is not blind optimism. It is emotional coherence. It is the deliberate choice to think, feel, and act from the vibration of certainty, even when evidence is absent. A reconfigured mind becomes a magnetic field. It attracts, organizes, and sustains prosperity. This isn't a single event. It's a lifelong practice. The daily act of noticing your thoughts, meeting your fears, and replacing them with higher truths. It's choosing consistency over chaos. It's maintaining emotional elevation even when the world seems low. That's the real discipline. Because abundance doesn't visit the impatient, it inhabits the steady. Eventually, abundance ceases to be a goal. It becomes a condition, a reflection of what you have already become. It stops being something you chase and starts being something you are. When you install the laws of image, conviction, space, precision, reciprocity, cycle, and source, you build an inner architecture where abundance no longer flickers, it flourishes. Because abundance is not an external force, it is your consciousness, finally coherent, and when consciousness aligns, creation obeys. Then wealth in all its forms becomes not a pursuit, but a natural echo of who you are when you finally remember your power.